Hi, welcome back to the Native Stock Show, a multilingual conversation series on music, design, and a bunch of other things. I am your host, Richard Gupta. And in this episode, design director Sang Walte joined us all the way from Tokyo, where we discuss about design, culture, and experiences. Please feel free to subscribe, share, and like the video. Also, remember to check the channel out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Welcome to the show, Usang.
Oh, thank you. Keep
Uh,
away.
no problem. We've been wanting to have you on our show for a long time now, and
Yeah.
for listener out there, Sang was supposed to be on episode one, but during that time he was relocating from London to Tokyo, so things got weird, and he wasn't able to make it. And we planned that he would be on the show for around episode 7 or 6. Then
hmm
we recorded part of it, but the connectivity wasn't that great, so we dropped that again. So finally we are here, and thank you so much for sparing us your wonderful time with us. And so just to break the ice, what are your thoughts on the new iOS UI rollout with iOS 14.1? What's your
Interesting question.
observation?
You know what? I think that's a fitting question considering my job and my
Yeah,
role.
yeah.
Um, However, like I don't pay much attention to it because I've kind of evolved in my career.
Mm-hmm.
But the short answer is that I like it. I think the way it's laid out. I use it all the time. I've updated right after the day, but on the day that it came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I really like it because of the widget system and the folder structure. Yeah, I just like it. I think it's very convenient. I guess it depends on how you set it up, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
And do you use the app library in that?
Yep. So I don't have anything on my home screen except
Mm-hmm.
the library.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, there's a widget part on the Spotlight. I don't remember what it's called. The widget area and then the home screen where it has excuse me, Siri suggestions,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other screen is just the library. That's it.
And do you think that it's trying to become more Android, or what's your thoughts on that?
Interesting. You know what? I think for Android users,
Mm-hmm.
people who have used Android for a long time, they might think that.
Mm-hmm.
And if diehard Apple fans, they might say, "No, we're not trying to become Android."
Mm.
But I don't know if any company owns any design really, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
um, like everybody, you get inspired by other people, and maybe that's the general trend where it's going, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, not being an Android user, I don't know what Android really looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I've used it from time to time because of my work. Like I would play around with an Android phone
Mm-hmm.
and see how it works. But I look at the mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
not really the visual.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the structure of an Android app look like at a fundamental level compared to an iOS so that I can design things well or I can inform my teams better. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I look at it. So to be honest, I don't know what Android looks like.
And
Like I
and
can't remember.
yeah, and how do you see that, the shift in the UI design where, previously it was a bit of a skeuomorphism design where it's all based on
Mm-hmm.
real life structure,
Yeah.
and then now it's
Mm.
all flat. What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. I think it's a good direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've also taken it too far. So what
Mm-hmm.
what was good about skeuomorphism is that not a lot of people were used to user interface at that point. So
Yeah.
if you think back like 2007, I think that's when the first iPhone was introduced.
Yeah.
So up to that point, and a few years later, we're trying to introduce people to the digital user interface,
Mm-hmm.
right? So before then, we're used to analog, like we're used to using, physical notebooks and
Yeah.
pens. and now we're trying to bring the people over to the digital.
Mm.
So we need to communicate that, and we need to use metaphors and symbols and shapes and colors that are more similar to the physical world,
Yeah.
so that they know how to use things, so that they can relate to things in the digital world. However, as a lot of people are getting used to the digital world, the digital user interfaces, um, it doesn't there's no need to keep doing the same thing, right, for the sake of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about the save icon, like back in it's a floppy drive,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the new generation, like they won't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, it made sense because floppy drive was the thing that you used to save files on
Mm-hmm.
computers.
Mm-hmm.
So when you use that icon, it makes sense, right? So
Yeah.
it's similar to that. Having said that, I think we've taken it too far, because we're getting rid of shadows, a
Mm.
lot of people, so everything's flat. And like one of the fundamental things about interaction design
Mm.
is, visual design is communication, right?
Yeah.
So you communicate to the user, you have conversation. You say, hey, I'm a button, you can click me. And even within buttons, you let the buttons speak for themselves and say, I'm the most important button on this page
Yeah.
or this screen. So, some people call it the call to action button, CTA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so buttons need to communicate that they can be interacted with. They
Yeah.
whether they're you can click on them or you can tap on them. But once you remove too much of the visual styling,
Mm-hmm.
the skeuomorphism, so to speak,
Yeah.
you remove all of those shadows, and everything becomes flat. You don't know whether it's just a text that's been highlighted,
Mm-hmm.
or is it a clickable link, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is this a button or just decoration on the screen? So I think there needs to be like a balance, and I think some designers, a lot of apps and websites, they do it right.
Mm.
But I also think that majority of people tend to get it wrong because they're like, okay, we got to do flat design and everything has to be flat.
Yeah.
So I think actually, material design, Google's material design, they have a good balance of that because they have different z-axis, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
of different buttons and different depths. So I think that's a good treatment.
Yeah, and I think we have gone too far to an extent where we too simplified it too much. Like for example, a lot of the
Yeah.
brands have in lately, simplified their logo, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is. I mean, in every design change, this is the reaction that
Mm-hmm.
every designer have. But
Mm-hmm.
later on, we adapt to what is the
Yeah.
new norms. But like
Yeah.
for example, the YouTube logo has been really simplified to a simple type text, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning I was like, oh, it's all right, but there's nothing much,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a written type, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
again, I try to understand, because it's more about being able to use the same design throughout the platform, right? Adaptability,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah.
in that sense, yes, it does make sense. But in some way, you feel that that's
Mm-hmm.
the original logo design, or maybe a little bit that's make it stand out rather than just a type text would be nice. That's what I feel personally.
Okay. Okay. You know what? I think, to be honest, like
Mm.
I don't care about logos that much again, in the sense, okay, I love well designed logos,
Mm.
right? So I love well thought out logos, and there was a time where I would constantly look for logos with negative space,
Yeah, yeah,
and some of them are very very clever. There's a very famous designer, Michael Beirut. He
yeah,
he said that people don't really care about your logos,
yeah, exactly.
and it's like the meaning behind the logo that's more important.
Mm.
So to give you an example, when Nike
Mm.
created their logo, they paid the designer like $50 or so. Like
Yeah.
she just came up with like the swoosh, because she wanted to make it something like look like something's moving or speeding through.
Yeah.
And then she added the Nike, the word Nike onto it. But then when they started implementing it to their shoes, the word Nike doesn't really fit, so they ended up removing it. But after, like the marketing people at Nike, they've done a really good job of drumming up the brand.
Mm.
And of course, like the athletes that they were signing on to represent the brand,
Yeah.
and all of those coming together. And now like the logo is just like, so beautiful, and it has so much more meaning and the story behind it. But if it's just a logo that that's created by someone, let's say in our hometown,
Mm.
for for a shoe store, like nobody would really pay attention to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people are like, whoa, that's just a tick mark,
Yeah.
stylized tick mark, right? So I, again, not uh, basically what I'm trying to say is logo is important, but not as important as we think it is. And
Yeah.
it's the story behind the logos that I personally think are interesting.
Yeah, the brand building and all sorts of other things that involved in
Yeah,
the brand stuff. So that
yeah.
is important. But the logo in itself is not a brand. So yeah,
Oh yeah,
I
100%.
completely I mean stand with you
Yeah,
on that point.
yeah, yeah.
And while we're mentioning that, you started your career as a, I think, as a web designer, right?
Yeah, so it's a very long story. How much how much time do we have? Um, so it's something that happened to me by accident,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, when we were growing up, there's no like you don't know anything. You don't know what you don't know. You
Yeah.
don't know that you can make a living as a designer,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And just like every other kid, like you grow up scribbling on paper,
Yeah.
sketching things, and like actually on your textbook,
Yeah. Exactly.
right? And your notebook for school, and you
Yeah.
always get in trouble for that. So and yeah, so to cut a long story short, I discovered computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was introduced to computer when I finished high school. That's when I started using Microsoft Word,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned about alignments and
Mm.
fonts and different types of layouts. And I used to be in love with word art. So
Do you know
and
that it's still there?
I assume so. I
It's
assume so.
still
There's
there.
so, I mean, with like the rainbow
Yeah,
gradients and the
exactly.
sunset and yeah, they're so beautiful when you were at, first introduced to computers and design,
Yeah.
and they're so easy to manipulate. And when you can do 3D and stuff like that. So anyway, um, so I got introduced to a computer when finished high school. So my school, so Foundation School.
Yeah.
Um, we had a few computers, and one was allowed like to be used by students.
Yeah.
And before the results came out, our Puvunga, our school owner, he offered us to learn the computer if we wanted to. So I signed up for it with a bunch of friends, and then when I started, you know, interacting with the computer, and then got introduced to Word Art and then Microsoft Paint,
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I was blown away, right?
And
Because I'm like,
let me
this
just
is
cut
like,
let me
yeah,
just cut
sure,
you
go
off
ahead,
there.
yeah,
Do
yeah.
you during those time you were not supposed to wear your shoe inside the computer room, right?
Oh yes, right. So because like actually, yeah, we had a computer room,
Mm.
and it's vacuumed every day because like
Mm.
the smallest dust, if it
Mm.
gets into the computer, it's gonna ruin it. So they're so precious. Um, but they were also so expensive, right?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
how many people in our hometown own a computer? I don't know, maybe 10 families. It's hard to count.
Probably.
Like there
Probably.
was
Yeah.
back in 2001.
Yeah.
So anyway, we signed up for it, and fortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, the computer that we're allowed to use was in the near the school kitchen.
Yeah.
so we didn't have to take off our shoes. And there's a separate computer room where it's locked, and
Mm.
you need a permission to go in there, and you have to be with like the person that's what do you call it, like, let's call him the keeper, the
Mhm.
computer guy, the
Yeah.
computer guy. So anyway, so he introduced me to Microsoft Word, and I fell in love with it, right? So like, oh,
Mm.
I didn't know fonts exist. And like I was doing what I can with Microsoft Word,
Mhm.
and then he introduced me to Microsoft Paint, and I was like blown away, because it was so exciting. Like you can draw a circle and you can fill it. If you make a silly mistake, like there's an empty gap, like the
Mm.
whole canvas was filled. So that was when my eye was open to design, the world of design,
Yeah.
but in a very um, childish way, not in a professional way, in the sense that like I
Mhm.
wasn't thinking that, wow, this is great, let me become a designer. It was more like I was never really good at sketching, so this is a
Mm.
tool that I can use to create something that I can't create with my bare hands, with my and by sketching with my hands. So that's kind of how I felt about it. Luckily, not a lot of people know how to use a computer,
Mhm.
and so there are a few family friends who would ask me to teach their kids.
Mhm.
So I'll teach them for like 30 minutes or so, and then they would let me use their computer for like the next 2 to 3 hours. And I was just like consuming it, right?
Mm.
Learning everything that I can. And then
Yeah.
finally, I happened to run into a person who doesn't like teaching his younger sisters,
Mm.
because it's too basic for him. He's quite advanced, like he's playing with Photoshop and things like that. So
Yeah.
when I met him, he's like, you teach my sisters and I'll teach you. So I was like, whoa, that's a good deal. So I was teaching his sisters how to use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Office, like PowerPoint and other tools. And then after I'm done with that, he will teach me Photoshop.
Mm.
And I mean, imagine like my mind was blown with Microsoft Paint.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
imagine the first time like I was introduced to Photoshop, it was probably like Photoshop 6.0 or 6.5. And yeah, anyway, that's how I got introduced to design, the world of design.
Mhm.
And then after that, I had some other family friends. They bought a computer, and he wanted to make some money, so he asked me to design bookmarks. So I was designing bookmarks for him, and he's selling them, right? So
Mm.
I was just happy, like I was like a free labor,
Mm.
um, but the value that I get out of using the computer and learning different
Yeah.
design techniques. So it was basically like nobody taught me how to design. It's just like, whoa, that looks good. Let me see if I can create that by myself using PowerPoint. And then eventually, we got to, excuse me, like Adobe, what's it called? PageMaker
Yeah,
at a
PageMaker
point.
was the
Yeah, yeah.
at the beginning, yeah,
Was the
which was
Yeah, it was the two.
transition to InDesign something, yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how I got into it, and then eventually, I met another person who knows how to uh, code HTML and
Yeah.
JavaScript, and so I met him at an internet cafe, and I was like so blown away again.
Hmm.
And I asked my parents if he could be my tutor, and so my parents said, "Well, why not? But we can't afford a computer. What are we gonna do?" So we negotiated with him, and he said, "Sure, like I'll leave my computer at your place for a couple of months, and you guys can pay me, X amount."
Yeah.
So it worked out, and I don't know how many hours I slept during those months. I was just consuming and learning HTML, and um, those back in the day, CSS wasn't popular yet, so like
Yeah.
you just code with tables, a table
Exactly.
within a
Mm.
table, just to
Yeah.
lay things out. So yeah, that's how I got into design. I mean, web design. And again, I didn't think of it as a job yet.
Mm.
It's a hobby. It's a skill that I really like, and I can create something for myself. Yeah.
Mm. And how did you get into the UI UX thing? And just to clarify,
Again. Yeah, go ahead.
If you can further clarify what is UI UX, because a lot of the people might, there's a lot of misuses in the terms in the
Yeah.
industry. So if you can cover up that as well, that would be really nice.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, UX stands for user experience,
Yeah.
right? So, there, if you go and do an internet search, you using a search engine, there would be so many different definitions. But I do like the definition that's given by the ISO, the International Standardization Organization. I think that's what they're called. We can Google it and confirm later. So they talk it as like they define it user experience as the experience that results from the use or anticipated use of a product or a service. That's paraphrasing it. So basically, um, your feeling, how you feel about using a tool,
Yeah.
right? When you think about it, how do you feel about it? How do you feel when you use it? And how do you feel afterwards, right? So um, so that's what your experience is. Maybe you're it's going to a restaurant. How do you feel about it? That's your whole experience going to a restaurant. Um, how do you feel about using an app like a Google Maps or an Uber or maybe a grocery shopping app?
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter, right? So
Yeah.
that's what the user experience is. And within the user experience, to create a good user experience, there are different things that makes up what a good creating a good user experience. So under the umbrella of UX, you have visual design, interaction design.
Yeah.
You would have research, you have content strategy, information architecture, right? There's a whole lot of things, but
Yeah.
they all come under the umbrella of UX. That's my view and the view of a lot of people that I know and that I've read. Um, so, but UI, what is UI and what is UX? Because sometimes it's confusing because as a UX designer, a lot of the times you do strategy, you do research,
Yeah.
and that results in your deliverable tends to be wireframes
Yeah.
or interaction design, right? So what you do is interaction design ultimately informed by research, and that becomes the user interface actually. However, there's also the other side of one of the tenets of UX, which is visual design. So visual design is also creating user interface,
Yeah.
which is why like they tend to overlap and there's like a gray area. Um, but yes, people do have roles like UX role, UI role, or UX/UI role. So the way I differentiate it is if it's how things work,
Yeah.
it's UX.
Mm-hmm.
If it's what things look like, it's UI.
Yeah.
So the job of a UX designer is to um, make the task of the user easy by creating flows and creating you know interfaces to help the user. Right, the user has a goal that they want to achieve, and the UX designer creates an interface or a flow that helps them achieve that goal. A UI designer's job is to create beautiful, easy to use interface that evokes emotions
Yeah.
or feelings that excites them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's more on the visual part,
Yeah.
but you axis more on the structure, right? The underlying mechanics of how something works.
Yeah.
That's how I would differentiate them. What about you? Do you have an idea or like an opinion on the subject matter?
Uh, I think I would agree to whatever you said, because that's basically kind of the general structure which everybody on the industry agrees on. But
Mm-hmm.
like even I know very well when the job description for a job is being sent out, it's like
Mm-hmm.
full encyclopedia of design that they want. Like he has to be good in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Angular, what all, and then also
Yeah.
with UI, UX, and everything, and then also knows the Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, everything,
Hmm.
and then you know
Yeah.
everything in a package, right? That's
Mm.
how
Yeah.
today's JDs looks
Yeah.
like. I mean,
Yeah.
there are good JDs out there, but
Right.
in the
Mm.
market,
Yeah.
usually that's how it
Yeah.
happened. And I
Mm.
used to look at the JD and say that, damn, you'll never find a person like this.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
one
That's
person cannot focus only on one thing. So similarly, even
yeah.
with the UI UX design, people tend to
Mm.
mix the two together and things that okay, they even some people out there who are in the
Hmm.
actually in the job also thinks that they are UX designer than UI. So yes, they can be a
Mm.
UX designer or a UI designer, but UX
Mm.
is if you're in the visual part of it, you're not actually a UX. That's what I feel. Although part of you will be
Hmm.
responsible for the UX, but not wholly or holistically. You're not
Right.
looking at the whole thing, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what I feel.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Like, what you just said about, you're part of the UX, right?
Yeah.
You're part of influencing. And, like from my experience and over the years, I
Mm-hmm.
actually start to think that the title UX designer,
Mm-hmm.
we should probably get rid of it because
Yeah,
it's so
yeah,
confusing. And because also the experience of the user is too important to be
yeah,
left up to just one person.
yeah, yeah.
And it's a team of people coming together to create a good user experience. So we have someone who's responsible, primarily primarily responsible for the visual side,
Mm-hmm.
a person who's responsible for the mechanics or like the flow,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have engineers who are responsible for creating really good servers,
Yeah.
back end databases that work really fast. You also have the project managers who make sure that we're on time and
Mm-hmm.
within budget. So I think we're all together, right? So together we're UX designers.
Including the
That's
customer
kind
or
of
the
how
user.
the user
Yeah,
is. Yeah, the user can help because
yeah,
definitely because a lot of times when we want to improve an app or a website or a service, where do
mm-hmm.
we go to? We go to customer service
Yeah.
and say, what has the user said? What kind of
Mm.
complaints do we have? What are the top complaints do we have from the users? So if the users speak out, reach out to companies and services and say, hey, this is the problem that I have with your app, or this area doesn't work well,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it may be. We actually need that input from the users so that we can create the best app or website or service possible for them.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yes, they're part of the creating a good experience.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly. Now that we've built the fundamental or the basis for
Hmm.
as an introduction, so can you talk a bit more about your role, current role, and then what you do?
Okay. So my current role is, the title is UX director.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is that I am in charge of the UX department,
Mm-hmm.
in my office.
Yeah.
And so I currently work for a UK company,
Mm-hmm.
um, from Japan, but I'll be moving to the US. So basically, it's a US company, but for a no UK company, US office.
Yeah.
So it'll be based in Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
Maryland. And so, however, I'm currently working from Japan. So my job will be to set up the team there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done that in the past, like in a previous company. So my role will be to go there, hire people, build up a team,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can deliver like the best products and services for our clients.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's
yeah,
yeah,
basically that's.
that's awesome.
Mm,
And I know you've been moving around a lot, crossing continents and countries, because of
yeah,
their jobs and all of the stuff. So, how was the
yeah.
experience moving from one country to the another, and then meeting new peoples and then culture contacts and languages and all of those stuff? How does it? How does the experience for you? I mean, how does it all bring in? How does it come together?
So it's very interesting because I've given a lot of thought about this. Sometimes like I feel like people are people,
Hmm.
regardless of where you go.
Yeah.
And not to say that we're all the same, right?
Right.
So in one sense, yeah, we're all the same because we're human beings and we have our culture, our
Mm.
background, our values. So that makes us the same.
Yeah.
But however, our values, our cultures are different. So we're
Yeah.
all different, right? We're all the same. If you look at it from like um, if you zoom out, if you
Hmm.
zoom out and look at people and look at the human race, we're all the same,
Yeah.
but we're also very different. We're also very unique, and we what I find is that the more I move around, the more I learn to respect other cultures,
Hmm.
and try to understand where people are coming from,
Yeah.
because it's so easy for a person to impose your values on other people, what
Hmm.
you think is right, what you were taught was right.
Yeah.
So I when I left India back in 2003, I was 18. I was really young,
Hmm.
and I thought I knew everything.
Hmm.
And like when I look back, I mean that guy didn't know any better, and I don't know how much this guy knows. So 10 years down the line, I might look back at our conversation and say like, what are you talking about? But based on what I know right now, right? So like the 18-year-old guy, like he was
Hmm.
proud, right? He was proud. He's a young punk, trying to make a name for himself,
Yeah.
and never been exposed, like never been out of the country, um, let alone the state.
Yeah.
Um, there were a lot of baggage that I took with me, right?
Hmm.
And after being abroad for a couple of years, I realized that, you know what? Like when you're far away from something, it's easier to clearly see certain
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
right? So when when I was home, I was immersed in the culture. I love our culture. Our
Yeah.
culture is very different in certain aspects. Um, but I was blind to certain things because it's just the norm. So
Yeah.
when I come out, I'm able to see that certain things that are different from other cultures. So I'm
Hmm.
able to you know compare and contrast
Hmm.
the similarities and differences, and that helps me appreciate our culture more in
Hmm.
some areas, and in other areas where it makes me think, okay, perhaps we could learn from other cultures and you know change their structure or the way you do certain things, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, that being said, um, the result of all of that is that you feel like like where do I belong now, because like you have evolved as a person,
Mm.
and your mindsets have evolved because of the experience that you have
Hmm.
interacting with different cultures,
Hmm.
because of your education, because
Hmm.
of the books that you read,
Yeah.
right? So you become a different person, and there are certain things that you have to constantly learn to um, adapt,
Yeah.
because right, like back home, I love home, but there are certain things that just works and certain things that don't necessarily work.
Hmm.
In the same way, certain things work in Japan that I'm like, "Wow, this is cool," but other things are like, I'm not sure if this is something that I'm comfortable with. So
Yeah.
it's a similar thing. I assume you have this similar kind of experience as well in that regard.
Yeah, kind of. And also, before I jump into your questions, you bring out a
Hmm.
very important, I mean, very interesting word, similarity. So, back
Mm,
home, if we look at it's a amalgamation of different tribe living in a very small area, right?
yeah.
So looking at the bigger picture, like for example, we have cookies, we have miso, we have chin, we have paite,
Mm,
all of those stuff. But you know, we never tend to focus on our similarity. right? We
Mm-hmm.
always
Mm-hmm.
find that 1% differences between a cookie or
Mm-hmm.
a paite, or a miso or
Mm-hmm.
a paite, or a chin.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I don't know whether you're following it or not. I doubt you'll be following, but there's been a lot of debate around chin and paite living in Manipur about the
Okay.
C and the CH, right? Cho
Mm-hmm.
and C. So we
Mm-hmm.
debate on those two letters, whether to use C or CH, whereas
Mm-hmm.
we never look at the other similar word or letters that we have been using.
Mm.
Because out
Yeah.
of those, like for example, 26 word or 25 word letters, we are just focused on
Mm.
that two letters which are different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we don't look at the similarity that we have, but
Right.
we focus so much on the differences that we have, that we cannot come into terms with the
Mm.
each other. So do you think that's
Yeah.
the issue, and how do you think that people can really resolve that kind of a thing? I know this is a big talk, but
Yeah.
we will not be able
Yeah.
to say anything constructive, but I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think I have two thoughts. One is like I'm wondering if you're referring to conflicts. Are conflicts good? Disagreement in certain
Yeah.
things. So I think just like anything, there it really depends on your end goal, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
the intent.
Yeah.
So what do you want to get out of? So some conflicts are worth it. Some are not.
Mm-hmm.
So C and CH. A C to me in English is um, a strong a strong kind of almost like a K sound. I
Mm.
mean, I'm not a linguist and I'm not good at um, I don't even know how to read the dictionary, like diction and what do they call it? I don't even know. Like when the way you should read a word, like the way
Yeah,
it's
the
written in the dictionary.
pronunciation and how they written down the pronunciation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, like I don't know that. Like it's
Mm.
not my area, right?
Mm.
It's not something that I focus on, and because I'm very um, picky about the things that I learn, but
Mm.
we can get to that later on
Yeah,
because
yeah,
our resources are limited. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that um, this is pronunciation, this is literature,
yeah.
and if the intent is that we want to be rich in our literature,
Mm.
we want to have a standardized form of writing,
Yeah.
and we want to grow as a community, as a tribe. I think it makes sense to have the
Mm.
discussion, and it should be discussed by the right people, the people who actually have knowledge in the subject matter, people who are linguistics,
Yeah.
who are linguists, and they should come together,
Mm.
sit and discuss, work it out.
Mm.
But if we're just arguing for the sake of arguing
Yeah.
because we want to win an argument, and I don't think that's really really helpful.
Yeah.
So it depends. Who are the people that are arguing, and what do they want to get out of that argument? Because
Exactly.
even argument is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
We used to think, I used to think that, oh, the argument is bad, but arguments are good things because they are communications to help you reach a common goal. In my opinion. So.
Yeah. That's a really nice way to put it. And to come back to your question,
Mm,
yeah, I've been. I mean, you kind of face like you kind of feel like a misfit sometime, because you grow. For example, especially for me, I
yeah.
grew up in part of my childhood was in Mizoram, and then
Yeah.
and then from there I came to Manipur, and then
Yeah.
I was in foundation school for a while. That's where you
Mm-hmm.
and I get to know, and then part of my schooling was also in Infal, and then and then because of the job I came to Delhi, and then
Mm,
almost 10 years now in Delhi, and then
yeah.
so you speak a bit of Mizo, Dulian Trong, and then you speak Paite, and then you also speak Hindi and English because the job requires it. I started
Mm,
learning here, so you kind of like
mm,
okay, where do I actually, because now what happened is after 10 years of working in the corporate sector and then speaking day in and day out English and Hindi,
Mm.
I know how it would feel for you because you've been away from home almost 17 years now. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was like, okay, even for this show, not because I'm good at English, I'm doing in English. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like that. But most of the people that I have to speak to are more comfortable in English rather than Paite, because even if
Mm-hmm.
we speak Paite, there's chance that we introduce so many slang word or English or Hindi here
Mm-hmm.
and there. So you kind of bit of lost there because your thought process
Mm-hmm.
started functioning like sometimes you think in English, sometimes you think in you rarely think in Paite. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not because we don't like it or we're not good at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that
Mm-hmm.
you've been using it so much for the interaction day in and day out
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
that's automatically your subconscious is picking that. And then like I said, not
Mm-hmm.
because we're good at English or we're
Mm-hmm.
the best with the grammar or the best of
Mm-hmm.
pronunciation. It's not that. It's just that we communicate daily and try to help the other person understand what we're trying to say. So it becomes like a first point of reach the self where you reach for when you search for the word. So that's what I
Mm-hmm.
feel for me personally. I don't know what about you, but yeah.
No, I can totally relate to that because I love Paite. I
Mm,
love our language. I think we have really good words.
mm,
And but language is a spoken language
yeah.
is a tool, right?
Mm,
So just like any other tool, um, like a hammer is a tool that you one of the tools that you use to build a house or
mm,
a chair, right? So it's
yeah.
the tool of a carpenter, or maybe a measuring tape, or whatever it may be. Spoken language is a tool for communication.
Yeah.
One of the tools, actually, right? So you
Mm,
have body language. You could also have sign language. You also have visual communication. So just like any tool, it's the tool that you use the most that you're best at.
yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have mastered it.
Mm,
It doesn't mean that you're the best at it. However, it's a tool that helps you best communicate currently.
yeah.
And if that happens to be Hindi, great. If that happens to be Mizo, if that happens to be Gangte, English, Paite, or Klingon for that matter,
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't matter. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't. So what I'm trying to say is that you know, as you move around, whatever you use the most is the dominant language in your
Yeah.
brain, just like you said, like how you think.
Mm,
Because when I started learning Japanese, I had to first think in either Paite or English,
mm,
and then translate it
mm,
in my head, and then form a sentence.
yeah.
So it's like, how do I say, how are you today? So how do Japanese people say how? Or how do they say you? How do they say today? The words I had to construct it in my head first,
Mm,
and then say those words out. Um, However, once I get used to the language, I don't even think. Because I think in Japanese. When I speak in Japanese, I just think in Japanese. It just comes out. So English, like I use English the most, right? And I assume probably for you as well
mm,
at work.
yeah.
So which is why, yes, I agree with you. We're not the best at the language. I don't know who's the
Mm,
best at English, right?
yeah.
Because just because you were born an English speaker you in America or Australia doesn't mean that you're really, really, really good at grammar. It doesn't mean that because I have a lot of friends and I've met a lot of people, and to be funnily enough, my wife says that like when she used to work in Japan and they get
Mm-hmm.
candidates resumes and they look at it and they instantly know that the candidate's in Indian, not because of the names, but because of the words that they use
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in their resume. Because it seems like it you know we use really big words,
Yeah.
and perhaps that's because we're trying to compensate for it, because like we want to show that we're good at English and we
Yeah.
know a lot of words,
Mm.
or maybe that's the way they speak. I don't know, but simply put, I think spoken language is a communication tool, and some people are better at X, and some people are better at Y, and we should use whatever works for us, and especially for your audience as well, right? So if
Exactly.
your audience who are listening to our conversation, if they can understand English, that's great. If they can only understand Hindi, I'm sorry, because I don't know much, and I'm so glad that you didn't mix in Hindis, because I might be like, whoa. And it's something that I actually wish I had learned, pay
Mhm,
attention more,
mhm.
because I think language Hindi is such a beautiful language as well. It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
exactly. And while we're talking about languages and all of
yeah.
this thing, when I was getting into the hand lettering and calligraphy and finally
Mm-hmm.
into the typeface designing, what I found
Yeah,
is that culture who has their own script are really, I really envy them,
mm,
because
yeah.
as a culture, for example, our
Mm.
tribe, Paite tribe, we don't have any manuscript.
You
So
know what? Actually, we do.
we do
It
have,
was,
but it was never used,
but
right?
that's like back in the day, like
Yeah,
hundreds of years ago, and
yeah,
people was just like, "Oh, what the heck is this?" I mean, yeah, we're not very mature as a civilization
yeah,
in
exactly.
terms of literature, and we don't even have like written records, like proper written records. So
Yeah,
anyway, sorry to cut you off. Please
that's all
continue.
right. Yeah, and for example, I really and then I get to understand why the Meitei started implementing by force the Meitei
Mm,
Mayak rather than using
yeah.
the Bengali script. So
Right.
I understand now why they are doing it. They are pushing it
Okay.
so hard, because
I'm
it's
interested in learning. Tell me.
so wonderful to
Yeah.
have your own script. And
Okay.
then they some people get a PhD degree writing a thesis out of
Mm,
that script. So I have few
mm-hmm.
friends who are actually the people who create the typeface for the Meitei Mayak at the very beginning.
Right. Right.
So
Mm,
because at an international level,
mm,
when you have your own manuscript, then the respect for the culture becomes really high.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like
Okay.
for
Okay.
example, in Adobe, there is a Bengali
Mm,
script. There might be a Hindu,
right.
Marathi,
Mm,
Punjabi script, everything.
mm,
But
yeah.
when we look at our culture, we use a English script, right?
Mm, mm,
So I mean that makes it like, oh,
yeah.
when we showcase our culture, and then people say, oh,
Mm,
your text is written in English. How does it pronounce?
mm,
It's like they can read half of it, basically.
right. Mm-hmm, mm.
So
Okay.
that's what I
I
see.
see.
Yeah, that
Mm-hmm,
although we want to say that we are really rich in our
mm,
culture, yes,
mm-hmm,
somewhere down the line, yes, we are rich in culture, but when we take a
mm,
step back, like you said, change the lens that we're looking on to a longer
mm-hmm,
lens, maybe,
mm-hmm.
then we
Yeah.
see that, oh, actually we're not that different. We are very similar to all the tribes out there in the Southeast Asia. Yeah, all of this stuff comes into the
Mm-hmm,
picture, and
mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what I
Mm.
wanted to say.
Okay. That's a very good observation. I think the more you know, right?
Yeah,
Like the less you know, the greater you think you are.
yeah, exactly.
Um, um, the less knowledge you have, the smarter you think you are. That's definitely what I have experienced, and like now I'm like I'm amazed by how much I don't know. Whereas when I was in high school, I probably thought I know everything, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
um, so once you get exposed to different cultures,
Hmm.
and you don't necessarily have to go to a foreign country for that. You can read books.
Exactly.
Now we have the internet. You
Yeah.
can go out and go use a search engine, your favorite search engine, and research other cultures and learn about them, and you will know how much you don't know, and you at the same time gain so much knowledge to realize that okay, we're very similar with different people. We're not that special,
Hmm.
but we're also special, right? So you
Yeah.
would know your sense, like yourself better, I think. if you do
Yeah.
that. So um, that's what I think about different cultures. But coming back to the us not having our own script, you know what? It'll be beautiful if we have our own script. They'll be amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to see what it looks like. However, the benefit of not having our own script, in the sense that the benefit of
Mm.
adopting um, the English alphabet, is that it makes it so much easier for us to
Mm.
access the internet, the technology
Yeah.
that's out there,
Mm.
computers, right? So it's so much easier for us to learn
Yeah.
a lot of things, be able to type in our own language using US keyboard, or
Yeah.
English keyboard. If we had our own script, like locally,
Mm.
because I don't know our population. Are we like 60,000 in total,
I think we're more
or
than
maybe 100,000
yeah,
at the most?
probably.
I mean, we
You
I
and
don't
I,
know,
you
right?
and
The
I
last
are
time I
so bad.
checked,
You and I are so bad with the statistic.
I know, right? So let's not get into it. But
Yeah.
last I checked, and okay, so you can't trust Wikipedia,
Yeah.
okay? But last I checked on Wikipedia, that it says like 72,000 or something. So I like to believe that we're more than that.
Yeah.
Maybe we could. Somebody might know this answer, but I would I would think that even if the consensus if the census was properly done and every person was accounted for, I doubt that will be more than a couple of 100,000 people,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, which company is going to create a software that
Yeah.
supports our language,
Exactly.
right? So, no one's going to do that. No company is going to make a keyboard
Yeah.
for us. So, in that regard, I think the fact that we use our own, like we adopt the English alphabet,
Hmm.
um, is very useful, but also at the same time, I think that, like you said, like to grow as a culture, to mature and improve or increase our literature in that area. The area, I mean, I'm not involved in that area. It's not my area of expertise, but I do think that it's like cultural growth, and it's a good thing for us. Sorry, I'm just rambling on. I
No, no,
don't even
that's
know
all
what I
right.
was saying.
No, no, that's all right. And then that's what the conversation is for.
Mm,
The
yeah,
the show here is about having a conversation, not an interview. Or I ask you a
right.
question, you answer me the answers. It's not like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Yeah.
conversation where we want to understand your perspective on things, not necessarily
Yeah,
that we know we are the expert. It's not like that. So
right.
yeah, and I think,
Okay.
yeah, that's where we can also, if we started exploring, and if we have the right tools, or the right, in terms of the manuscript, that's where I think we
Mm,
can also try and introduce some design language based on
mm,
who we are as well.
mm.
Later
Okay.
down the line,
Okay.
because it will be difficult to
Yeah.
implement, but later down the line,
Mm,
that's where we
yeah.
can take baby step as a community, and
Yeah.
then
Definitely.
explore on that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what do you think about the design as a whole? Like, do you take it as a job, or because I feel for me it's a lifestyle, not a
Mm.
job. It's either you have
Okay.
it or you don't have it.
I see. When you say you have it, what? Sorry. Let me try and understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
As in, like, are you talking about the skill or the passion
the passion, the
or
passion.
the passion? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's different for everyone, right?
yeah, yeah.
So for me personally, um, I don't know what I would do, like if I wasn't a designer, because it's something that I found by mistake.
Hmm.
I find myself to be very, very lucky, um, and I think luck is very important in your life, and
Yeah.
people don't give it enough credit. Um, so the fact that, like I told you the story about
Hmm.
going to foundation school and being allowed to learn the computer there, and that led on to the other people that I met, and then
Mm.
eventually being able to find a job as a designer. Like I never sought out to be set out to be a designer.
Mhm.
um it's like when you're a kid, people are like, hey, what do you want to become, like when you grow up, and like you don't know what to say. I never knew what to say. So eventually I realized that, oh, actually this question is not for me, this is for them. They want to satisfy your own curiosity. So I
Mm.
started saying things like, oh, I want to become like a pilot, or I want to go to the army, and people are like, whoa, that's really, really good, right? Because when you don't know what you want to become, people
Mm.
think like, oh, you have no ambition, you're never going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
But like, dude, I'm a 14-year-old. Like, how am I supposed to know what I want to do for the next,
Mm.
60, 80 years of my life? Like, I don't know. But it's a pressure, right, that we put on kids, and it's like,
But do you ever
and
feel like becoming a pilot?
no. Oh no, I felt like I had to have an answer, right? So what would be the answer that gets like the most, like the most reaction, interesting reaction,
Mm.
or that will shut people up, basically, right?
But
Because
but
if
have you ever
if
imagined
you say I
yourself?
yes, no, I actually. So once I started saying that, I
Mm.
actually started like thinking, when I finished high school
Mm.
and going to. But then I'm like, no, this is not me. Like I don't like math, I don't like science, and like I'm never gonna do that. So I switched from
Mm.
science to arts,
Yeah.
and also because I was lazy, to be honest. Like I didn't want to study,
Mm.
and I was like, you know what? I just want to read like history books and political science and economics, and just it'll be easy. So like it wasn't like a deliberate like, hey, let me think about what I want to do in the future. So anyway, coming back to the topic of a designer, right? So
Mm.
some people, they do it as a job, right? So
Yeah.
it's a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
They go to work, they do their design, and they're done. And some people, they can't do that. Because they're like, they go to work and they look at a problem, like, and they think about how to solve it. And so even when they get home, they keep thinking about it while they're taking a shower, where they're on the way to work, commuting. So for me, I agree with you. Like it's very much a part of me.
Yeah.
And so just to tell, like, share a story with you. Um, I was supposed to move to Spain back in April.
Mm.
So I got a job offer back in January, and we were preparing to move to Spain, and then the pandemic
Yeah.
happened, and you could imagine the rest, right? So so it was the first time that I was without a job since April, so May, June, July, August, for 4 months, right?
Mm.
So I was like, I kind of like you know almost lost my identity in a sense,
Mm.
because like being a design director is what defines me.
Yeah.
Even though I don't want a job title to define me,
Mm.
but that's what somehow gives me identity, or um, validation in the sense, right? So it's like, hey, nice to meet you. So what do you do? That's the first thing you ask.
Yeah.
You ask each other. So um, it is very much, I guess, similar to you. Is very much in me and who I am, because once you become a designer, and it may not apply to everyone, but for me, it's like you the world opens up, right? You look at the world in a different way. It's kind of like the Matrix, when Morpheus gave, like, the red pill or the blue pill
Mm.
to Neo.
Mm.
So it's like I've taken the pill, and then I'm like seeing usability issues everywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like colors, like sometimes they hurt your eyes, but also at the same time, you walk down the street and you can appreciate really beautifully done, banners or ads, and it's so much richer, like the way you perceive the world, and I love it.
And do you ever go visit someone's house and then correct their picture hanging, which is like tilted a little bit? Do you ever
No,
do that?
no, No, I will never do that. Because you never know, right?
Yeah.
Some because some people maybe they like it that way.
Mm.
Who
Mm.
am I to go and tell them what's the right way to hang your picture is?
Yeah.
Because not everything has to be symmetrical. Not everything has to be straight.
Yeah.
Because design, I mean, so let, let me tell you what I think design is, right?
Yeah.
So I actually have a Medium article that I wrote about like how I have, how my definition of design has changed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So um, it has evolved, and ultimately, what I ended up defining it is to create something with intent.
Yeah.
So if you have intent, then and you're creating something, you're that's design. And what makes a good design or a bad design? That you measure it by how well it fulfills that intent, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's how I define it for myself and how I evaluate good or bad design. So just because something is straight or crooked or misaligned, it doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It really depends on what you were trying to achieve, right?
Yeah.
So to give an example, if you're if you're designing a chair for a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So you get a brief. We need a chair for a restaurant. Okay, you don't just start designing it. As a designer, you say, okay, what kind of restaurant is it? Is it
Mm.
a fast food restaurant or is it, a high end restaurant?
Yeah.
Do you want people to sit there for a long time, or do you just want them to come in, eat their food, and get out? The material that you choose, the height of the chairs, the way that they, whether they can, incline or not, where you can adjust them or not, the colors, it will that all of that will depend on what type of restaurant the chair is for, right?
Understood.
So that's kind of how I think about it. So but I mean, of course, when I was younger and starting out and had to prove myself as a
Mm.
designer, I mean, yeah, I probably could have said something I don't remember. Maybe I blocked it out of memory, but I don't recollect anything doing anything like that.
And
So
in your
yeah,
definition of design, good design, like you said,
yeah,
something that is great with an intent, how where does
yeah.
the purpose lies?
Intent is purpose in my mind,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Like the
So
end result of
there's a yeah, yeah, yeah.
how the end
So
result is being used, or
let me so basically, are you so coming back to the idea of a chair,
mm-hmm.
are you designing it? So what is it that you want to achieve? What's your intention? I'm trying to design a
Mm.
chair,
Mm.
and it is for a fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
And the business model is in most fast food is that they want people to come in,
Mm.
order their food, and go out.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll provide um, seats, chairs, tables in at the restaurant, but the best way uh, a fast food restaurant makes money is that people come in and out,
Yeah.
which is also why they paint, like a lot of them use red color because
Mm.
psychologically it makes you eat faster.
Yeah.
So that's the intent, right? The
Yeah.
intent is to design a chair that allows people to sit down so they're more comfortable than standing,
Mm.
but not too comfortable that they
Comfortable.
sit there forever.
Yeah.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the intent in my mind. So how long people sit, that's kind of like how you measure it,
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah.
And in your career, you might have
Yeah.
client horror story. I guess a lot of them. I guess.
Yeah.
Can
You
you
know what?
say?
I know what. Yeah, I think designers like to talk about like bad clients and stuff
Mm.
like that. Um, I like. I think client or not, there are certain people that are just difficult.
Mm.
But it. I think it's chemistry.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, there are like people that are you know clinically insane or
Mm-hmm.
psychopaths. Like there are people who have problems like mentally, like
Yeah.
there are people like that for real, right? um, but generally speaking, Um, I think good client, bad client, horror client. Um, it's most of the time it really depends on the chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
the combination. So there, because certain client that are not good for you, like the one that you think, oh my gosh, that is the worst client, I don't want to work with this. Maybe another person might say, wow, this is the most easiest to work with client.
Yeah, yeah.
um, there's a possibility. And of course there's also clients that like everyone says, oh my gosh, this is like the worst client ever. And maybe, there's another agency where all the clients say, oh my gosh, this is like a really bad agency, I don't work with them anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? So having said that, um, challenging experiences that I've had with clients, um, I think that's a question, right? what
Yeah,
what
yeah,
are the like, interesting
yeah.
stories? So it is when I was quite young and I was a freelancer, and the client was a singer.
Mm.
He's a singer. I think he's still a singer. And so with artistic people, right?
Mm.
They have it in their head, like the concepts in their head,
Yeah.
and then they're trying to communicate it to you,
Mm.
and your job is to somehow understand what's in their head
Mm.
through their like verbal communication,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then try to put that on screen in the design. So for me, that's like the toughest client that I had, um, just because I was also very young,
Mm.
you know, and I wasn't good at client management.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he was a strong-minded person. He knew
Mm-hmm.
what he wanted,
Mm-hmm.
but he couldn't communicate that well. And I didn't also have the skills to prod him or ask the right questions to try and understand what he wants. So we probably went through like 100 revisions of the website. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. And yeah, it's tough. But on the opposite side, like I work with for example, my
Mm.
like one of my clients who is a university professor.
Mm.
He's like, okay, I need a website that has to do with X, and here's the content that I want to put on it. And he gives it to me. And I'm like, okay, so this is about literature, or this is about art, or this is about, jazz or music. How can I communicate that to the audience? And he's
Mm.
just like, gives me creative freedom, lets me go wild in
Mm.
a sense. And that's really, really easy as a creator, right? As a designer. But at the end of the day, being a designer is a job. Being a designer is not just being creating something, but it's also about helping the clients achieve what they need to achieve their goal,
Yeah.
helping your clients achieve their goals. So I think that you know that's a very long a long way of answering a question, because I I don't think that they're like like bad clients, good clients, and like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I personally don't have a lot of horror stories. Like,
Mm. Mm.
like, yeah,
I think that's what we all learn as we grow into our career. Because in the beginning, when we started, not everybody is aware of how to deal with client management.
yeah,
And
yeah,
mostly, we don't, as a designer, we don't interact much with people. So,
mm,
but as we grow or climb the ladder, we start to learn how to deal with people, and then realize
mm-hmm,
that it's not necessarily bad client, good client. Sometimes it's just
mm-hmm,
because we couldn't ask the right question, or
yeah,
prop enough. And
mm-hmm,
maybe 1% or 0.05% might be bad client, which
mm-hmm,
are, like you said, not match for us, not a match make for us, because it's all about relationship communication, right? So it doesn't really,
yeah,
sometimes we can't just work with some people, we can't work with all
mm,
of the people that comes to us. So yeah,
mm,
and even
mm,
personally for me as well, there are some clients that I just say that, you know what, my friend is really good, you should go there, instead of just saying that I
Mm,
can't work with you, uh, because by the
yeah.
tone of the email or by the tone of the conversation you get, after certain years
Hmm.
of being in the industry, you get a
Yeah.
gist of, okay, what is coming next.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in that,
Yeah.
so I usually just say that,
Mm,
maybe this is not, then this might not be the right client for me, because
yeah.
like you said, it's all about relationship and communication. So if
Hmm.
if we can't, if you know that you
Mm.
can't achieve something, then I think it's always good to just say that, instead of
I
burning
think
the
that's a really
bridges.
good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
That's a really good point because yeah, some clients are just right for you and some are not.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the way it is. But there's also another really interesting point that you mentioned about skills, communication skills,
Yeah.
and um, like soft skills, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important thing. Technical skills like you
Mm.
can learn.
Yeah.
You want to know how to use Figma
Yeah.
because it's the new shiny thing. It's that everyone's jumping on.
Mm.
You can learn that. You can learn Sketch. You can learn Photoshop. You can learn how to code. You can learn,
Mm.
Swift or JavaScript or Java or whatever. But soft skills, like and emotional intelligence, those are harder to learn. Those are
Exactly.
harder to cultivate. And in my experience and my observation, um, those are the more important skills that you
Mm.
need to work on
Mm-hmm.
because and again it just helps you as a person, as a human being,
Yeah.
relating to other people better, even if you're not a designer. But especially if you want to become a leader,
Yeah.
if you want to climb the like, to use a very old phrase, climb the corporate ladder.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, you know, Emotional intelligence is so important because the people that become managers and leaders are not necessarily the best at coding or the best at design, but they're the people that they who can lead people, who can um, understand other people's feelings and
Mm.
needs and be able to help them. So just being like a good executioner
Mm-hmm.
in terms of design, it's not enough if you want to like grow your career. Unless like you own your own business and it's just like hire whoever you want and you're the top. Even then, you still have
Even then,
to
you still need to have,
manage
yeah,
people
exactly.
like clients and build relationships. So yeah, I think emotional intelligence is um, you know undervalued, or people are not aware of it as much as we should be.
And I think that's why people like you are sought after by the industry.
I don't know. You know what? To be honest, it's something that I'm actually learning. Like um, because it's not the easiest thing.
Yeah.
Um, they're trying to empathize
Mm.
constantly,
Yeah.
right? Being aware
Mm.
of other people's feelings, but also at the same time being assertive. So like, how do you make sure that your team is moving forward, motivating them, but also making sure that they don't become complacent.
Mm.
Being in the leadership position, um, I love it because it's like something new to learn about people
Mm.
every day.
Mm.
But sometimes I was thinking back, wow, like thinking back like 16 years ago, or maybe 14, 16 years ago, when I was like, my main job was to just design something or a banner. It was so much easier because like, okay, tell me what to do, I'll do it. Don't have to think about anything. Okay, let
Yeah.
me just. Oh, you want 5 banners within 2 hours? Okay, fine. Like, just great. And then it's like there are no other responsibilities, right? So it's a different kind of like freedom in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, both of us has got into the zone so much that our audience might not really understand what we're talking about. But
Yeah, sorry.
yeah,
I'm
but
sorry,
that's who
guys.
we
I
are.
don't know what
That's,
you,
yeah,
your audience. Like, I mean, I don't know what they came to your channel for,
yeah,
and
that's who we are.
apologies.
Yeah, that's who we are as a
But
designer, and we
yeah,
we used to get lost in our own conversation. But going just before we end here, I just want to ask you a few more questions.
of course.
People people from back home We are really
Yeah.
talented. I usually say we have the raw talent, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think we have the upper hand to be really, get on the top as a design career in a design career, or something like that? What are your
Mm,
thoughts on
okay.
that?
Um, when you say top, are you thinking that like, like world known or like becoming the chief design officer or,
Yeah, some
you
sort of
know,
like that. Like be
or be really,
successful.
really good?
Yeah, be successful at least. You know.
I mean, yeah, the short answer is yes, if you want it and if you go for it.
Hmm.
But you also need luck.
Yeah.
Luck
Well,
is
why
like
would you say that luck over hard work?
because you can be the most hardworking person,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't have luck, then it's harder. It's
Mm-hmm.
harder because it's the people. It's kind of like time and chance.
Mm.
So okay, let me take a step back. So you need hard work.
Yeah.
You need to be prepared
Mm.
when the luck presents itself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be, even if you have luck and if you're not ready,
Yeah.
you can't do anything. But if you have the skill and no luck, it's also hard. So I think so. People who work hard, from my observation of other people that I've seen, the books that I've read and podcasts that I've listened to, people who keep on working and who are driven are luckier than people who are not trying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
If you know what I mean,
Yeah, that's interesting.
because they actually go out to meet that luck,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're just sitting in your room practicing, let's say, a software or how to do visual design or painting or whatever,
Mm.
you can master that sitting in your room, just sitting in your room, and you can practice, you know, 2 hours a day, 5 hours a day for 5 years, and you can become like one of the most, talented, one of the best painter in the world.
Yeah.
But luck's not gonna come find you
Yeah.
unless somebody drops in, and maybe there's even a chance that luck finds you, but it's harder for luck to find you. It's harder for you to find opportunity, right?
Mm.
So I think luck is very important. The reason I say that is because I just look at my own life
Mm-hmm.
and the people that I've met and people that were able to help me along the way. Like I couldn't have done it without them, and you know, I think it's easy to think that okay, you know what, I work really hard, and this is why I get to where I am today. But I don't think that's true. Just meeting those right people at the right time
Mm-hmm.
um, is very very important.
And to work smart, I would add to that, rather than work
Yeah,
hard,
yeah.
because
Oh yeah, definitely,
yeah, because
definitely.
hard working is kind of like, if you don't work smart, if you even if you work hard
Mm,
or burn the midnight oil or do whatever you have to
yeah,
do, you'll never. I for me personally, you'll never get anywhere.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, which is kind of what I was talking about, like in the
Yeah.
beginning of our conversation,
Yeah.
about like very picky about the things that I know about or
Exactly.
read about. So, um, for example, um, I don't read the news,
Hmm.
like events,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have the time. I have other things that are more important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason is that our brain is limited, right? So
Yeah.
it, it's like the memory that you can store in your brain is limited. The things that I can remember, the things that I can focus on at one time in a given day, and we all are born with our IQ level,
Yeah.
intelligence, right? So you can go. It's a bracket, right? So it's like, let's say it's a scale of 1 to 10. You're born with a bracket of 3 to 7, or maybe eight to 10, or whatever that may be. So if you don't work hard, if you don't work on your brain, or if you don't develop
Mm-hmm.
skills, you're at the bottom of your bracket. So let's say you're a 6 to 9, right? So if you don't work hard, you'll always be a 6
Mm-hmm.
because that's the bottom. But you'll still be smarter than the guy who is like you know, a 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's just biology. So m- for me, like I want to hit the top of my bracket as much as I can. So maybe, let's say I'm a 4 to 7.
Mm.
So I want to get to 7, right?
Yeah.
So in order to do that, I know that I'll never be as like intellectually because it's physically impossible because of my the makeup of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way
Mm-hmm.
it is. So I'll never get to an 8, but as a 7, I can, like you said, work smart, be smart, and do some things that an 8 can't do.
Yeah.
Be more successful than a 10 in
Yeah.
some areas, right?
Mm.
So, which is why I'm very picky about how I spend my time, the things that I store in my brain, the things that I want to work on physically, the books that I read.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I don't read nonfiction. I don't read fiction, um, and because it's they're interesting. I'm sure I love them if I read them, but for me, they don't add
The
anything to
values.
my life, values in
Mm.
sense of the areas where I want to grow in,
Yeah.
right? So I think they do have values in a sense because sometimes you have to escape
Mm-hmm.
into fantasy, into into this a different world, and live there so that maybe it's cathartic, maybe you can relax, or maybe whatever the reason may be. But I get that from movies,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So instead of reading a whole book, and a book and movies are never the same, but I let the movies do it for me, and I allow myself to watch one movie a week.
Mm-hmm.
So and well, I don't remember the last time I sat down to watch a movie, but I used to watch movies a lot right away. Like it's not like
Okay.
I've
Okay.
never seen movies,
Mm-hmm.
but so that's the way I live my life in a sense
Mm.
at this current stage of my life. Um, I don't know if it will change. I don't know if I'll remain the same, but for me, it's really important that I am very picky about the things that I do, and the routine that I have for myself every day.
Yeah. And in short, it's simple as finding your own niche, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
because out
yeah,
of the many in the crowd, you have to find your own
yeah,
niche. And
yeah,
how you do that is that's up to you. How it depends on your personal schedule, your personal commitment,
yeah,
and all of those stuff, and
yeah,
how far you want to go. Because in
yeah,
today's world,
100%.
yeah, it's in today's world, it's the world is here. So
Mm,
if you want to go,
yeah,
it's up to you how far you want to go, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that
Yeah. Yeah.
because I think I can be more specific, right?
Hmm.
So in the whether you want to become a designer or an athlete. And lift is a slightly different thing because you also definitely need to be born with certain like
Mm-hmm.
body structure depending
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
type of sport that you want to get into. But let's say you want to become a designer in digital or product, or you want to become a good carpenter,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, the most important thing for me is figure out what are the things that I need to do to become that person, that version of myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Write it down in a piece of paper, and then I'll look at them and say, okay, so I have to do this five, let's say five different things to become good at what I want to be, the
Mm-hmm.
version that I want to be. And then write a list of things that you do every day, the list of things that you actually do every day, and
Mm-hmm.
compare what do you need to do to get to where you are and what do you do every day. How
Yeah.
do they match up? Like, and this is like my own realization. Like one day I realized that I did this exercise by myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
realized that I'm only dedicating maybe 20% at the most of my
Mm-hmm.
time
Mm-hmm.
every day to the things that I want to get better at. And 50%, I mean, like most of the time you end up sleeping, so
Yeah.
like all of that is taken away, but your waking hours, like I realized I was watching Netflix all the time. And then I'm like, okay, so how is watching Netflix helping me like develop the skills that I want to get to where I am?
Yeah.
So that's when I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna allow myself one movie a week.
Hmm.
And then I get to a point where I'm like, I don't even like, crave to watch movies.
Mm.
The only thing that I do is, and again, this is what works for me. So I'm not saying that this will work for everyone,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
think everybody
Understood.
has to find your own path.
Yeah.
And I'm not a guru, right? I'm not
Yeah.
like preaching. I'm just saying what has worked for me so
Hmm.
far. So anyway, um, without getting sidetracked, what I'm trying to say is list down the things that you need to do in order to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
Like figure out the version that you want to be,
Hmm.
and then know what you need to do to
Hmm.
get there. And then look at the things that you do every day.
Yeah.
Are they aligned with what you want to do, what you want to become? Basically, that's my advice, whether you want to become a designer or whatever that it may be.
Yeah, that's a wonderful advice, and it takes a lot. It will take in the beginning a lot of courage to really do that, because we tend to justify whatever we do as a human being, saying that, oh, this is okay,
Hmm.
this is good, this is fine, this is okay.
Mm.
I can't take away that. For example, obviously, when you do that in the
Mm.
beginning, watching Netflix, you might have justified internally at the back of your head. Somehow,
Hmm.
try to justify that. I said so. Yeah, it's a good
Hmm.
advice, and everybody should. If you are really into what you're trying to be, maybe next year, next 5-10 years down the line, that's something you have to do, sort it out. Otherwise, there is no easy
Hmm.
way out, I would say.
100%. And it's just build a habit. That's all.
Exactly.
Build a habit.
Yeah.
Very small micro habits,
Yeah.
right? So um, they add up. They add up like over time.
Yeah, and habits are what makes people successful, right? Basically, all the
Oh yeah, I
successful.
mean,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
A lot of successful people, like the what's his name, the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, I believe. Like he wakes up at, I believe, 5 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
like every day.
Yeah.
He wakes up at 5 before everyone wakes up, and then does his exercise, does his thinking at the time of the day, and other people like I think Tim Ferriss as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of successful people who decide to wake up early, so that they can get a head start before the rest of the world, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying that waking up is going to solve your problems or make you successful, but
Yeah.
they have those habits,
Yeah.
right? And those tiny small habits are
Yeah.
what makes you your character.
Yeah, and it all bring back to what we keep on saying, because design theory has been used to solve many problems. So,
Yeah.
it's always like having an intent, design with an intent. Similarly,
Yeah.
whatever you do, you
Yeah.
have to have an intent for that. Just
Mm-hmm.
waking up early won't make you a successful person, but if you have the
Mm-hmm.
intent why you wake up early, then
Yeah.
why you have to wake up early, then that will make you a successful person. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Sang. And
No, thank you. It's great. You know what? I wish there was a way to prepare for this, but there wasn't. So
no, no, no.
um, I hope we made sense.
We would make sense, and I mean, it's a conversation, like I've always mentioned, and I don't
Yeah.
want anyone to prepared for it, because it's like an impromptu, not because
Yeah.
I'm good at
No.
having a conversation with people, but
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
just want to have that flow of, free mind, open-minded conversation
Mm-hmm.
without any structure.
Mm.
That's all. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. You know what? Can I also say something before we
Yeah, yeah,
go?
sure, go ahead.
So I want to acknowledge you for what you're doing, because I think what you're doing is really amazing.
Thank you so much.
And this is badly needed, and I admire what you're doing, especially because I thought about doing it for a long time
Yeah.
and I couldn't do it, right? Because Um, to be honest, I'm too lazy
Mm-hmm.
in this area, right? So it's not my line, and I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
focus on something else. But I'm so happy that you do this because this is so important. And
Mm-hmm.
the guests that you have, they're amazing people. And I like listening to your outer talks. It's really good, and I like to encourage you to keep doing this. It's really good.
Thank you so much, and I am trying my best to keep it up, but with personal schedule and everything.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's see how far we go, but we will try our best.
Yeah,
I will try my best to keep up
yeah.
the show, and have
Hmm.
more people on the show
And
and
yeah,
explore. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, and if it, I mean, this is your show, and I'm not telling what how to do your job, but if it
Mhm.
gets too busy, it doesn't have to be every week. It doesn't have to be every month,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
keep it going. This is what I'd really like to see because I
yeah,
think that great things will come out of this show.
yeah,
I hope that people learn from something, right? At least something. At
yeah, yeah.
least learn something that hey, this is the way to do something, or oh, that's not the way to do things. Whatever that may be.
Uh,
So I
yeah.
I think good things will come out of your show.